Okay, folks, now it's time to fix Isom number two's opening sequence in a segment that I call Speaking of a Bad Segue. Now, we're going to be looking at the very first story pages of Isom number two. My first couple of videos focused on the covers and the interior pages leading up to the story pages. Now we are actually getting into the story of Isom number two itself, so spoilers will abound, and let's get into it. Here is the first panel of Isom number two. And it's a picture of a woman who's looking concerned in a location I know not what. Yeah. Let's take a look at all the problems with this panel. Number one, there's no location given. We have no idea where this woman is. Number two, seriously, we don't even have the slightest clue where this woman is. We don't know if she's in an elevator. We don't know if she's in a hallway. We don't know what building this is in. I mean, we have no idea where this woman is. All we know is that she's standing in what looks like an interior structure somewhere. She's also unidentified, so we have no idea who this woman is. And basically all that amounts to is the fact that we have a no information panel. Now, why is this a bad thing? Because, you know, if you've read Isom number one, then you will recognize this woman as being Avery's sister, Altona. And to be honest, the next panel actually identifies her as Altona, but this is the first panel that the reader's actually going to look at. And we also know from Isom number one that she works in a place called Projexus, and she has spent time in Projexus headquarters. That is where we might naturally assume her to be in this case. The problem is that that's making a very, very big assumption about the reader coming to Isom number two. We're basically saying that, hey, if you read Isom number two, then obviously you've read Isom number one. That may not be true. And here is why I say this is a real concern and something that does need to factor in to how the book is written. Let's say that there's somebody who really, really winds up liking the character Gooding, who is going to get his own one-shot or series, I'm not entirely sure, written by Mike Barron. If you like Gooding, then you might want to go back and find Gooding's first appearance, and that first appearance is in Isom number two, which, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with Isom number one as far as Gooding is concerned. So why would that person necessarily go back and get Isom number one? So you need to treat Isom number two as a standalone book, or at least a book that is a person's point of entry into the story of the ill-advised arc. So let's take a look at these things and see what we can clear up. Well, as it turns out, about 90% of this can be cleared up just by adding the necessary information. Projexus headquarters, Altona Silman, Chief Technology Officer. And now we've gotten rid of practically all of the problems, except for the fact that we're still not quite sure whether she's in an elevator or a hallway. And this has become more of a low information panel as opposed to a no information panel. But we can do better than that too, because there's room on the page to have more information. And we do know that coming up in the book, we do have thought balloons, which means we could have thought balloons here. So how about, instead of having just her standing there, we have her standing there thinking and informing the reader what it is that's got her so troubled. Like, I should have known Avery would screw this up. Now, that's an intro panel. It shows that there's a pre-existing problem, and it also talks about her relationship to the character of Avery, who is the title character of the book, and you know, you get a little bit more information, some bang for your buck, and that's really important in a comic that you're charging $35 for. You want people to get the most out of your panels that you possibly can. Now, the next panel, we have someone breaking in saying, "Altona, you okay?" But there's a problem with this, and the problem is we still don't have enough information before this guy comes in and interrupts. Well, I say guy, we don't know whether it's a guy or a girl, but we'll find out in the next panel it's a guy. So there's not enough information before the interruption. And this is actually an easy fix too. The first thing you do is you move the dialogue balloon down lower, and then you add her thoughts above so that she can clarify what it is that has her so concerned and what is it that Avery screwed up. So have something like, damn it, Avery, I just wanted you to ask Darren where Jasmine is, not to try to beat it out of him. Okay, so now we have an idea of here who Avery is in relation to her. Well, it doesn't say that it's her brother, but there's somebody named Avery who has tried to do something for her, and he's not done it the right way, and so now she's stressed out over that. So somebody's coming in and saying, Altona, you okay? And the next three panels involve her meeting with this particular person who is an unnamed co-worker of hers. And he says, though I've never seen you this way, I know what stress looks like. Is this about the merger? And when I hear the merger, and he's thinking that she might be stressed about it, I think to myself, has Projexis been bought out by somebody? Because that's why I would think somebody would be stressed out about a merger. If your company is bought out, you're going to get new management. Maybe you're going to get axed. And so I'm already thinking that Projexis is under threat. And Altona responds, what? No, just had a long night. I'm good. And he says, so it's just me, huh? Now, that's a little bit of a problematic dialogue balloon because that can be taken one of two ways. He means it, as you'll find out in the following panel, he means it, so it's just me who's nervous, huh? But I thought when I originally read that, so it's just me that's bothering you, huh? Or it's just me that's stressing you, huh? It could be taken either way. And so that dialogue balloon really needs a little bit of clarity. Now, the rest of it talks about how he's a longtime member of the board, and this isn't our first purchase. Now, I could still read that, technically speaking, as this isn't the first time we've been purchased, but I think at this point I'm kind of like, okay, I think I understand now that they're actually buying a company as opposed to being bought by a company. But again, one of the things that I'm going to constantly harp on is we should have clarity up front. There should not be a time when the customer who's reading this book is unnecessarily confused by the sparsity of the data being given. If your dialogue can clarify what you mean, then do it. Change your dialogue so that it clarifies what you mean. And I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. Now he's saying, but this one isn't some failed startup with a decent idea. This new territory worries me. And she says, well, you didn't seem at all concerned when we were still in discussions. Your intuition is a little late, don't you think? And he says, well, that was my mistake. I'll email you and the rest of the team with some of my findings by the end of the day. Now, the fact that he may possibly communicate back to her something later in the day means he's essentially a potential recurring character. And as such, he needs a name. We should not have this guy be an unidentified character at this point, if it's possible that she could get an email from this guy, and we would have to know somehow from the email that it's him who sent it. Give us some identifying information. Now, all of that can be accomplished by modifying the dialogue in this panel, all three of the issues that I had with this. So, though I've never seen you this way, I know what stress looks like. That's kind of clunky. I'm not sure anybody actually talks like that. So without changing the dialogue immensely, I think if you just reordered it a little, and also talking about the merger as rather an acquisition, you can get some clarity as far as what kind of business dealing he's actually thinking that she might be concerned about. So I would change the dialogue to say, I know what stress looks like. I've never seen you this way. Is this about the new acquisition? And you might actually say, I've never seen you this way, though. I wasn't really thinking about including the though in there, but it might fit. I've never seen you this way, though. Is this about the new acquisition? And she replies, what? No, just a long night, David. I'm good. And the reason I said David is because the way he was talking before, it kind of reminded me of a droid from Star Wars, and David Tennant is playing the old droid in the Ahsoka series, so I figure I'll throw this guy's name in as David here. And so when she says, no, just a long night, David, I'm good. So that identifies him at least. And then he replies, so it's just me who's nervous, huh? And then you can go into the rest of the flow of the dialogue, and it's clear that we're talking about some company that Projexis is purchasing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He'll get back to her by the end of the day. And thanks to our knowing his name, we will know if she says, oh, it's David's report, then we will know that it's this guy who we're talking about. Now, The next few panels, and I'm not going to show you everything that's on the pages, aside from the fact that that would probably offend against fair use or things like that. I just don't want to cover every single panel in detail, just the ones that really have the issues. There are 3 panels here on the next page or so, and they're all blank. And there's so much room here where you could give us her thoughts. You could give us kind of recaps. You could see what goes on in her mind as a CTO, or is she still thinking about Avery? Is she thinking about whether she left the oven on? We don't know. Is she thinking about her daughter? She could be thinking about Vassy here. We don't know. There's so much blank space here, and it's all a wide open field of opportunity for the writer to show what it is that she's thinking, even if it's not necessarily the most important stuff in the world, but it could at least communicate and flesh out some background about her, what it is she cares about, etc., etc. Don't let open spaces like this go to waste. Now, she walks in, and it turns out there's Darren Fontano, except if you haven't read Isom #1, you don't know that this is Darren Fontano. In fact, if you have read Isom #1, you don't know this is Darren Fontano. Why? Because he's never identified in Isom #1 as Darren Fontano. He's only ever called Darren. This is the first chance we actually get to introduce this character fully. So let's do it. Darren Fontano, shot caller, empire builder. All right, now let's move on. We have a 3-panel sequence in which Darren is basically kind of reintroducing himself to Altona and kind of wanting to set the agenda. So he says, don't ponder too hard what's trying to figure, or don't ponder too hard trying to figure out what's taking place here. Psst, because that's the reader's job, apparently. I need your full attention. More than likely, you put him up to this. We assume he's talking about Avery, but actually in the original dialogue, Avery was never named, so who the heck is him? I figured we'd catch up in proprietor persona. How's little Vassy, by the way? And she says, Darren, I swear to God, if... Okay, let's look at this first dialogue balloon. Don't ponder too hard trying to figure out what's taking place here. I need your full attention. It's like, okay, hold on. We don't need him to say this to her. That's just kind of freaking obvious. What this dialogue balloon would be useful for is catching the reader up, the new reader, to Isom #2, on what happened in Isom #1. So let's change the dialogue to say, your brother Avery pulled up and made a mess of my club last night looking for a girl of yours. Hurt my men, too. Now we've established that Avery is her brother, and we've also established the basic plot of Isom #1. So now the reader can kind of have an idea of, oh, okay, now I know what happened then. So Darren says, more than likely you put him up to this. I figured we'd catch up in proprietor persona. How's little Vassy, by the way? Now here we have a chance for Altona to identify Vassy as her daughter, so let's do that. This dialogue is not cutting the mustard, so we change it to, you even look at my daughter? And then we can flow into the next few panels. Now, skipping ahead a little, Darren says, I watched that brother of yours do some real athletic stuff. Apparently, he took out my accept. How did he do it? She says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And also, the reader has no idea what you're talking about, because the reader who's new to the Isom world, to the Rippaverse, is not going to know what the word accept means. He took out my accept. Is that a security system? Is that a particular person? Is that a category? Is that technology? We don't know what accept means in the context of the Rippaverse. So why don't we give the reader an extra clue about what accept means at the same time excluding Avery from that category? So let's have Altona say instead, I have no idea. Avery is no accept. He's average. And I threw in that last word because it made me think when I was trying to think from Altona's point of view, how does she see her brother? Does she see her brother as a success, or does she see her brother as having settled for an average life, despite the fact that he owns his own ranch? I mean, she might be, as a person in the corporate world, somebody who looks down on him on account of his being just a small business owner in her eyes. So, maybe she has disdain for him, and maybe that's one of the reasons why there's tension between the two of them. Now, I don't know. I mean, that could be completely inconsistent with Eric July's idea of their relationship, but we don't really have a good grasp on their relationship so far. So I will occasionally try to read things into it that may or may not be accurate. Now that pisses Darren off and says, "Woman, you've got the nerve to play stupid with me. I'll." And then a voice from above on the speaker says, "All right, that's enough." And then they just kind of look around stupidly at each other. Now, this is another wasted panel. You have at least an opportunity for some sort of dialogue. And I figure, how about something like, "Who said that? I bought off security." And that would at least get you an idea of how Darren got into the building in the first place. Because, when we walk in on him, you kind of think, well, how in the world did this guy get up here? You don't know. And so this is your first clue of how that happened. So, who is the voice? The voice is the first new character that we're actually introduced to in Isom number 2, and that is Lincoln Eusebio, Projexis founder. And I have to congratulate Eric July and Gabe Al-Taib on conspiring to create the dullest freaking character design I've ever seen. We've got gray on gray on gray with other shades of gray. Is there 50 shades of gray? Yeah, I said it, but it's all gray. I mean, you could have put "Bore Me" on his t-shirt and it would have actually been more enlivening than what you actually have in the book. But it gets better from there, because this guy, he's a badass. You're only here because I allowed you to be. And so he punches Darren in the gut, saying, "Don't ever put any hands on anybody working for this company." And then he gently hands Altona her glasses back, saying, "I remember you bringing up the fact that you knew him. What on earth have you gotten yourself into? And what the hell is up with his facial hair?" Okay, this is two successive pages in the book, and his facial hair changes twice. He goes from bearded guy with sideburns to 5 o'clock shadow guy to scruffy beard guy, no sideburns. I mean, what the hell? I have not seen a continuity errors like this since 1996, when Rob Liefeld did Captain America and showed Sam Wilson, old Sam Wilson, in the background wearing a button-down collar shirt. And then on the next page, he's got a knit collar shirt. Like, what? Do you not even see your own artwork going on here? Thank you, Cliff Richards. Thank you for bringing back my nightmare from 1996, which is just absolutely terrible continuity in panels. $3.7 million Eric July generated from Isom number 1. How much do touch-ups cost? I have to ask that. How much does it cost to send this page or these pages back to the penciler and say, can you make this consistent so that he's either got a beard in all 3 or any one of these facial hairstyles in all 3? I mean, can you do that? I mean, how much has he guaranteed his pencilers? How much is he overpaying them? I don't know if he's overpaying them or if he's just paying them a fair rate, but how much is he paying them such that it's actually counterproductive or a waste of money or it's too expensive to actually have something like this fixed? Do you really think we're not going to notice this? Come on. Good Lord. And you see, I was going to give a recap, really, of all of the things that I saw that I found wrong in there, where I was going to list out, well, these people aren't named, or you don't make use of the real estate that's available to give people thoughts, give us more information, etc., etc. Honestly, all of that is beside the point. I just want to give my number 1 complaint. You're making rookie mistakes that you didn't make in Isom number 1, which means your quality control has only gotten worse. Okay? Think about that for a second. You're making mistakes like not establishing setting, like having the wrong kind of facial hair on the same character in 3 different panels on 2 successive pages. Those are things that didn't happen in Isom number 1. Why are they happening now? That's not good. And that means that the quality control has gone south. All right, and that just leaves me with, it leaves me dyspeptic thinking over what I'm going to see in the 100 or so pages to come. Now, the good news is that Eric July has said that he would love to work with Jim Shooter and have Jim Shooter advise the Rippaverse in an editorial capacity. My advice, get on the phone right now with Jim Shooter. Okay, it's James C. Shooter on Twitter. All right, you can probably reach him that way. Get him the hell into the Rippaverse right now, because it is clear as F that you need an editor, an honest to goodness editor. And I have no doubt that Jim Shooter can keep you on the straight and narrow in that regard. He can also help you immensely in your writing, because he's got years and years and years. He's been writing comics since he was 12. He was writing Legion of Superheroes at like age 12. Oh my God. Yes. Call Jim Shooter. Call him right away. Goodness gracious. Now, it just so happens that Into the Spider-Verse has appeared at Redbox, so I'm going to go ahead and get that. I mean, think about that for a second. Isom #2 is so far so bad, I actually need to watch Miles Morales as a palate cleanser. That's how bad things have started. Oh my God. All right, so this has been the latest Let's Fix Isom #2 segment. Speaking of a bad segue, because it doesn't get too much worse. Thank you for watching. I'm Mike Partika. Please do follow me on YouTube. Subscribe so that you can get notifications of the next Isom #2 video, and we will see what we see there. My goodness, I'm just. Yeah, let me get that into the Spider-Verse into my veins before I just go into some kind of anaphylactic shock over all of the nitpicks that I'm allergic to out of these freaking errors in the first 6 pages. There's still like 100 pages to go. Oh God, am I ever going to survive? All right, thanks again. I'm Mike Partika. Please do subscribe, and I will talk to you later.